With the recent announcement of World of Warcraft's Vanilla or Classic server launching near the end of summer in August, hype has been full steam ahead for a relaunch of the original WoW launch in 2004, often dubbed Vanilla WoW. Whether you are a previous player, someone who didn't get to try it out back then like myself, or a completely new player altogether, I am going to make the argument that all parties, even those who won't play, have a reason to be excited about the launch of Classic WoW. Classic WoW could very well save the MMORPG genre. Of course, this is some slight hyperbole, but to explain what I mean further. World of Warcraft is the consensus most popular MMO of all time. It's permeated multiple countries, dominated the overall player subcounts numbers, bar DFO, and is the MMO most people think of when they think of an MMO. It had a subsequent movie launch. WoW is the ultimate blockbuster of the MMO genre. World of Warcraft, however, hasn't always been the same game. Being a game now alive for 15 years, it has undergone 7 expansions, new graphical updates, and even a revamp of existing territories in the game. Simply put, no matter how you slice it, WoW is not the same game it was when it launched, both literally and figuratively. Many other MMOs tried to do what WoW did originally, but many failed. They ultimately didn't understand what made WoW so successful and simply copy the formula without actually understanding the ingredients. Why did Vanilla WoW, the state of WoW typically described as anything before TBC, work? Well, there are hundreds of videos outlining why people loved Classic WoW and the Classic WoW experience, but to condense those into a few main points. The world and lore tie-in from existing Warcraft universe. This made characters, classes, and factions have more motive, and the result is a more compelling world. I myself was a big Warcraft 1 and Warcraft 2 fan, and since most people know at this point that WoW was started from the Warcraft 3 platform, it's just hard not to see the similarities given it's in the same universe. Vanilla WoW also had little to no instant travel, no flying mounts, and an overall focus on community aspects, such as grouping for quests, raids, PvP, and even requesting foods, portals, and buffs sort of like in EverQuest. Grouping in Vanilla WoW wasn't a click of a button. It was a process that you undertook that made the rewards that much sweeter. It also introduced some real consequence in the form of community. If somebody was, say for example, known as a ninja looter or just a bad person, well then maybe they won't get groups in the future. Like EverQuest and Star Wars Galaxies, WoW Vanilla made what most people call leveling an experience in itself. It wasn't just a race to the finish line. There was a damn good journey from level 1 to level 60. Progression is ultimately slow but rewarding. Getting that next piece of gear or level just feels so sweet. Now, there are many more reasons that people will cite for why they loved Vanilla WoW and the experience within, but the Vanilla WoW experience, however, technically only lasted for 2 years. TBC, or the Burning Crusade, launched about 2 years after Vanilla WoW, and with it came flying mounts, class balance changes, as well as an increase in level cap. TBC is often cited as a very positive expansion for WoW, but it's clear to see that it was the first of the cracks to form that inevitably led WoW to the current state it's at now. So yeah, let's go ahead and talk about current WoW for a bit. 7 expansions and 60 levels later from level cap in Vanilla WoW, and we have current WoW. By current 2019 standards, WoW is nearly unrecognizable by comparison despite being the same game, only in name. With WoW polishing further and further its vanilla product and subsequent expansions that not only changed how the game played, but in many ways made many of the older leveling experiences kind of useless. Modern WoW has gotten to the point where it's abandoned many of the original tenets that people originally fell in love with the title. Modern WoW these days plays more like a lobby game where you sit in town and queue up for the next dungeon, arena, raid, or battleground, all conveniently a click away. There's no consequence. No longer do you need to form relationships with those that you play with. Instead, you can just not say anything, and due to the obvious decrease in overall difficulty level in WoW, it's simple enough to get through most dungeons. This is the perfect time to describe an analogy, and I think it's one that's central to the theme of WoW slowly losing what most considered the original pillars of gameplay. WoW, when it launched, even then was considered a highly polished take on the MMO realm. Unlike most developers, Blizzard had taken 5 years to work on WoW, using that last crucial year to polish the existing systems. What we got in return was a game that played on most systems and ran without a hitch. Still to this day, WoW remains as a standard in the MMO genre with regards to its engine and gameplay aspects. It's just buttery smooth. However, there's such a thing as maybe too much polish. When you take a piece of raw wood, it's pretty unimpressive in itself. It's just a block of wood with splinters all over and rough wooden exterior. You get my point. It might not look or fully function as it could yet, but with a little time and polishing, it could someday make a grand table or something. Now I'm back in middle school in its woodshop class. We're all designing these wooden cars to race with. I wasn't particularly gifted in my craftsmanship, but I knew that if I sanded my wood long enough, it would eventually become polished. That sounded a little bit wrong. However, when you take a piece of wood and sand it too much, you make the overall foundation of the wood too weak and brittle. My wooden car never made it past the finish line. It was far too polished, and thus I had ruined the structure of the very car. World of Warcraft in its vanilla format was already a major hit, but WoW didn't become a mega hit as we know it until Wrath of the Lich King. Wrath of the Lich King brought WoW into a never-before-seen superstardom. However, what Wrath of the Lich King also brought was way more polish, possibly too much polish, as with my wooden race car. It's effectively killed most of the open world PvP with the exception of its designated PvP zones due to flying mounts and the map being easier to traverse. It streamlined grouping functions with the addition of LFG, which killed the community feel, and finally, and most noticeable of all, the game got really easy to play. Dungeons were now AoE spam fest, every character was made to feel more and more powerful and self-sufficient with subsequent expansions. Sure, in the short term, WoW ballooned up to 12 million subs and was shattering review scores with an aggregate score on Metacritic of 91 out of 100, which for an MMO was unheard of. But the damage by Wrath of the Lich King wouldn't be seen until much later on. Catching back up to modern WoW and its latest flop of an expansion, Battle for Azeroth, which I spent some time on the channel already discussing, many people, including myself, saw Battle for Azeroth as an expansion meant for the classic age of WoW, not the modern age. And this is where I must confess. I have had a bit of a weird history concerning WoW. In fact, I have been one of its most vocal critics. And of course, as you guys know at this point, I was a huge Geek Lord MMO player growing up and all that sort of stuff, and I had largely operated in MMOs outside of WoW. So perhaps I have more of a looking in perspective and less of a nostalgic perspective. But after playing Battle for Azeroth, I started to realize something. It was starting to become apparent that due to many design decisions and radical changes in WoW over its 15-year development cycle, it had reached a point where it most likely can't really recover back from. It's strange to hear this, I'm sure, as it's still clearly a successful MMO. But WoW's content loop has always been themed around developer-made content. It's a theme park. It just so happens it's a damn good one. But when it's no longer a good theme park and the content doesn't impress, like with Battle for Azeroth, WoW loses a large amount of subs because by effect, they are only able to satisfy the majority of their audience by putting out big new expansions. When the players no longer want to play that style of content, however, possibly because, as I previously outlined, they believe the overall foundation of WoW to be compromised for where it was originally at. Then we will see a very sudden fall for an MMO that has ruled the genre for over a decade. I outlined this in my Battle for Azeroth video, that I don't really blame the expansion itself for fully not taking off. I believe that modern WoW is compromised. It's overstepped too many boundaries and has given up most of its original vision in favor of more polish, streamlining, and most of all, money. Chasing short-term profits, Blizzard has sort of unintentionally unraveled many core aspects of what made WoW so great. This brings us to the title of the video. Why can the launch of WoW Classic save the MMORPG genre? Now, I must confess again, this is certainly a big claim, and I don't claim to have enough evidence to be absolutely certain, but I do have an interesting case that I hope you guys will enjoy hearing me explain. Blizzard met the consumer demand with WoW Classic. For a long time, private servers in the vanilla or the TBC expansion thrived, until eventually facing C&Ds, cease and desists. Fans are practically begging Blizzard to erect some classic servers, and they finally have answered that demand. The reason that the WoW Classic hype and the overall interesting situation presented with such of a reboot of sorts is beneficial for the MMORPG market as a whole is the following. It allows us to see how the WoW of old compares against the current and modern WoW, which is a rare opportunity to see if an original product, so to say, can outshine its more perhaps evolved or devolved depending on your opinion product. Many people, including myself, believe WoW changed greatly over the years of its expansions, and it's interesting to see how its most vanilla version stands up to such. It's proof that something in the current market isn't working. Not even long industry titan WoW in its modern state is faring well. Perhaps current games or future ones can learn something from vanilla WoW again. It addresses the question of whether or not sub-based games can still work because WoW Classic is strictly a sub-based game as of 2019. The MMO landscape is either free-to-play or buy-to-play with some sort of cash shop and possible VIP membership. But can the old-school submodel still work in such a market? It's literally the reverse of how things happened in the past. It might embolden new developers to be more bold or use Classic WoW as a template. I don't want to say that Classic WoW in any shape or form is perfect, and frankly speaking, it could use some more sandbox elements, I think personally, but what if a new developer took that Classic WoW model and then just innovated upon it? It would be like someone wowed WoW. Most importantly, it shows how lifeless modern WoW had become, and how full of life Classic WoW felt. The social element had fallen by the wayside. We know that WoW Classic will at least be successful at launch and for some time after, but there is still very much the question of what comes after the 1 to 2 years worth of content that vanilla WoW has. This is a question many in the community have raised. Will Blizzard continue to launch content following the vanilla timeline, so more patches up until the release of TBC, the Burning Crusade? Or perhaps they will do something like Jagex does with old school RuneScape, where you take the old gameplay model and slowly add new content to it in the way of community voting and the like. Only time will tell, but one thing's for absolute certain. I cannot wait to not only watch and enjoy the story unfold concerning Classic WoW, but to live and experience it for myself. Perhaps like many of you for the first time too. I want to make WoW content leading up until WoW Classic's launch on August 26th and then stream it after that. I realize I'm not the OG WoW content creator, but I figured you guys would find my take on such things interesting. And as usual, I will tackle topics I think that aren't fully explored yet, and uncover yet more mysteries concerning a MMO that many people thought was kind of all figured out. Thanks for watching, guys.